For 29 years, I felt like a spare part in our cold Greenwich mansion. But tonight, when the woman I call mother toasted to 100 guests that I was merely a walking tax write-off, she unknowingly signed the death warrant for her fake empire. My tiny clutch does not hold tissues for tears. It holds a stolen will and a forensic report that are about to turn this lavish birthday party into a total massacre of our family reputation. My name is Liana Amberton, and if you were to judge my life solely by the scene unfolding before you, you would think I was the luckiest woman in Manhattan. We are at L'Aube Dorée, a restaurant so exclusive that reservations are handed down through wills like family heirlooms. The name translates to the Golden Dawn, but looking around at the velvet drapes the color of dried blood and the chandeliers that hang like frozen tears, it feels more like a golden cage designed to suffocate its inhabitants under the weight of their own pretension. It is my 30th birthday, 3 decades of life. Yet, as I stand at the threshold of the private ballroom, clutching my invitation like a ticket to my own execution, I feel less like the guest of honor and more like a prop in a meticulously staged play. I arrived 15 minutes late. This was not an accident. I needed those 15 minutes to sit in my car, staring at the steering wheel, breathing in the scent of recycled air and gasoline, reminding myself that the woman who walks into this room is no longer the scared little girl they groomed to be grateful. She is a senior architect at Vanguard Horizons. She builds skyscrapers that withstand hurricanes. She can certainly withstand a dinner party. The maitre d'. A man with a mustache so stiff it defies physics, bows low as I enter. The doors swing open, and the noise hits me first, a wall of polite laughter. The clinking of crystal flutes, and the low hum of gossip that serves as the primary currency of this social circle. The room is packed with 100 of the city's elite, bankers, socialites, politicians, and the inevitable cluster of hangers-on who survive by feeding off the scraps of attention the wealthy discard. And there she is, Victoria, my mother, or rather, the woman who legally possesses that title. She is standing near the center of the room, bathed in the flattering glow of a spotlight that I suspect she paid the lighting technician to rig specifically for her. She is wearing emerald green, a color she claims brings out her eyes, but actually just highlights the predatory set of her jaw. She is laughing at something a senator is saying, her hand resting lightly on his forearm, projecting an image of such maternal warmth and aristocratic grace that it almost makes me nauseous. To the cameras flashing in the periphery, because no Amberton event happens without press coverage, she is the saintly matriarch. To me, she is the architect of every insecurity I have ever harbored. Standing next to her, naturally, is Clarissa, my younger sister, the biological daughter, the golden child. While I am dressed in a charcoal silk sheath dress that I bought with my own bonus check from Vanguard Horizons, Clarissa is draped in something that looks less like clothing and more like a desperate cry for attention. It is a bright pink confection covered in sequins, likely costing more than my car. She is 25, loudly recounting a story about her recent trip to Milan, her voice carrying over the music with that specific pitch of entitlement that only the truly spoiled can achieve. She glows. She radiates the confidence of someone who has never been told no. Someone who has never had to wonder if her seat at the table was conditional. I scan the room for the third member of this dysfunction. I find him in the shadows near the bar. Robert Amberton, my father. He is nursing a glass of scotch, amber liquid swirling as his hand trembles ever so slightly. He looks older than his 60 years, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of his expensive Italian suit is too much to bear. He sees me enter. Our eyes meet for a fraction of a second, a fleeting moment of recognition before he looks away, burying his nose in his glass. That is Robert's signature move, the pivot. He has spent 30 years pivoting away from conflict, away from truth, and away from me. I take a breath and step fully into the room. Liana, darling. Victoria's voice cuts through the crowd. It is performative, pitched perfectly to draw every eye in the room toward me. You are finally here. We were beginning to worry you had gotten lost on the subway. A ripple of polite titters moves through the crowd. It is a subtle dig, a reminder to everyone that while they took limousines, Liana the practical, Liana the worker bee, might have taken public transit. I did not, of course, but facts have never mattered to Victoria as much as the narrative. Happy birthday, Mother, I say, my voice steady. I do not lean in for a kiss. I know better than to ruin her makeup or risk the chill that radiates off her skin. Look at you, she says, gesturing vaguely at my dress. So sensible, very professional. I suppose that is the architect in you, always prioritizing function over form. Architecture requires both. Actually, I reply, keeping my smile fixed. But thank you. Come, come. She ushers me forward, but not to the head table. No, the head table is occupied by Victoria, Robert, Clarissa, and the senator and his wife. Instead, Victoria guides me toward a table slightly to the left, near the service entrance where the waiters rush in and out with trays of escargot and foie gras. We put you here, darling, Victoria whispers loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear. We know how uncomfortable you get being the center of attention. You always were such a shy, retiring thing. We thought you would prefer a bit more privacy. It is a masterclass in exclusion disguised as consideration, by seating the birthday girl away from the family. She physically manifests my status. I am part of the event, but not part of the core. I am the satellite, not the planet. I sit down. The people at my table are strangers, mostly mid-level executives from Robert's company who look terrified to be here. They nod at me politely, unsure of how to treat the daughter who is sitting in the cheap seats at her own party. I pick up a glass of water, the ice clinking against the sides. From my vantage point, I can see the entire room. I can see the way Clarissa leans into the senator's son, laughing too hard at a joke that clearly was not funny. I can see Robert signaling the bartender for another double, and I can hear the whispers. My hearing has always been sharp. It is a survival mechanism I developed as a child living in that cavernous house in Greenwich. You had to know where Victoria was at all times. You had to hear the click of her heels on the marble to know which version of her was approaching the public saint or the private tormentor. She looks nothing like them. Does she? A woman in diamonds whispers at the table behind me. Well, you know the story, her companion replies, lowering her voice to a theatrical hush. Adopted, a charity case from some orphanage upstate. Victoria is a saint for taking her in. I heard the girl came from absolutely nothing, bad stock. Is that why she works? The first woman asks. I mean, actually works. I heard she is at some firm downtown. Vanguard Horizons, the companion sniffs. Yes, imagine an Amberton needing a 9 to 5. It just shows, does it not? You can put a girl in a castle, but you cannot take the gutter out of the girl. I take a sip of water. The liquid cool against my burning throat. Bad stock, gutter, charity case, these are not new words. They are the soundtrack of my childhood. I remember being 10 years old, standing in the kitchen with a report card full of straight A's, waiting for Victoria to look up from her magazine. When she finally did, she didn't smile. She just sighed and said, "You have to work harder than Clarissa. Liana, it is not your fault. But your natural capacity is simply lower. We have to make up for your genetics with discipline. Gaslighting is a slow poison. It does not kill you instantly. It paralyzes you by making you question the ground you stand on. For years, I believed her. I believed I was naturally broken, intellectually stunted, and morally indebted to them for saving me from a life of squalor. I worked twice as hard. I graduated top of my class. I became the youngest senior architect at Vanguard Horizons, not because of nepotism, but because I worked 80-hour weeks while Clarissa was partying in Ibiza. I look down at my dress. The charcoal silk feels cool under my fingertips. It is simple, yes, but it is structured. It has integrity. I paid $3,000 for it, swiping my own credit card. Every thread of this dress belongs to me. Unlike Clarissa, whose 5-figure gown is paid for by the family trust, a trust that, until 3 weeks ago, I thought was being managed with my best interests in mind. The room suddenly quiets. The lights dim, leaving only the spotlight on the small stage at the front of the room. A waiter refills my glass with champagne. Vintage 1982. The year Robert and Victoria were married. A bitter vintage, I imagine. Victoria is stepping up to the microphone. The crowd hushes in reverence. She adjusts the stand, the diamonds on her wrist catching the light, sending fractured rainbows dancing across the ceiling. She looks perfect, composed, the grieving mother who raised a stray. "Good evening, everyone," Victoria says, her voice smooth like warm honey. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate a very special, albeit complicated, milestone." Clarissa is standing just off stage, holding her phone up, live streaming. I can see the ring light attached to her case glowing. She catches my eye and smirks, a small, cruel twisting of her lips that says, "Just wait." My heart begins to hammer against my ribs. Not the flutter of anxiety I used to feel when I was a child waiting for a scolding. This is different. This is the thumping of a war drum. I look at Robert. He is staring at the tablecloth, his hand gripping his glass so hard his knuckles are white. He knows what she is going to say. He knows what they are planning to do tonight, and he is going to let it happen, just like he let them erase my mother, just like he let them steal my inheritance. I reach for my clutch. It is a small, hard shell of black velvet. It feels heavy in my hand, heavier than it should be. Inside, nestled against my lipstick and my phone, is a thick envelope. It contains the forensic accounting report I received from Silas Blackwood. It contains the copy of Arthur Amberton's original will. It contains the truth about the woman named Elena. Victoria taps the microphone twice. Tap, tap. 30 years ago, Victoria begins, her voice taking on a somber, theatrical tone. Our family made a decision of the heart. I tighten my grip on the clutch. The edges of the envelope press against the lining. I am not the little girl who hid in the library anymore. I am not the spare part. I am the architect, and I have found the structural flaw in their foundation. We decided to open our home, she continues, to a child who had nowhere else to go. The lie hangs in the air, glittering and toxic. I take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of expensive perfume and betrayal. Let her talk. Let her build her tower of lies one brick higher. The higher she builds it, the more spectacular the collapse will be. I am ready. 3 weeks ago, the architecture of my life was still structurally sound, or so I believed. I was sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor of the Vanguard Horizons building, staring at a set of blueprints for a new eco-resort in the Maldives. The lines were clean, the angles precise, and everything made sense. That is the beauty of architecture. If the foundation is strong, the building stands. If the math is wrong, it falls. Human lives are rarely so binary, but I had spent 30 years trying to force mine into a similar grid of logic and order. My assistant, a bright young man named Kevin, knocked on the glass door. He was holding a package wrapped in brown butcher paper, tied with actual twine. It looked like something from another century, completely out of place against the chrome and glass aesthetic of our office. "This just came for you, Liana," he said, setting it on my desk. No return address. The courier did not even ask for a signature. He just dropped it and left. I waited for Kevin to leave before I reached for it. The package was heavy, dense. There was no label, just my name handwritten in black ink. The handwriting was jagged, archaic, the kind of script you see in old ledgers, not on modern parcels. I cut the twine with my letter opener. Inside, there was no letter, no explanatory note. There was only a heavy, rusted iron key and a business card. The card was cream-colored, thick stock, slightly yellowed at the edges. It read Silas Blackwood, attorney at law. The address was in Brooklyn, deep in Red Hook, an area that was currently trendy but had been a wasteland of dockyards and warehouses for decades. I knew the names of every lawyer my family used. The Ambertons retained firms with 3 names on the door and offices on Wall Street or Park Avenue. They did not use lawyers in Red Hook who operated out of buildings that likely predated the subway system. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. It is the hairline fracture in the concrete. I canceled my afternoon meetings. I told Kevin I had a site visit, grabbed my coat, and took a taxi across the bridge. The address led me to a 3-story brick walk-up sandwiched between a coffee roastery and a shipping warehouse. The buzzer for Blackwood was taped over with masking tape. I pressed it, and the door buzzed open with a sound like an angry hornet. Silas Blackwood's office was on the 2nd floor. When I opened the door, the smell hit me first: old paper, dust, and pipe tobacco. The room was a labyrinth of filing cabinets and stacks of books that reached the ceiling. Sitting behind a desk that looked large enough to land a plane on was a man who looked like he had been carved out of walnut wood. Silas Blackwood was ancient. His skin was papery, his hair a tuft of white wool, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and fiercely alive. He did not look up when I entered. He just gestured to the wooden chair opposite him. "You have your grandfather's chin," he said. His voice sounded like gravel crunching under tires. I froze. "I was adopted. I do not have anyone's chin." Silas finally looked up. He took off his wire-rimmed glasses and wiped them on his tie. "Is that what they told you? That you were a stray? A tax write-off picked up from the gutter?" "Who are you?" I asked, gripping the strap of my bag. "And why did you send me a key?" "I was Arthur Amberton's personal attorney for 40 years, Silas said. "Not the company lawyer, his personal attorney, the one who handled the things he did not want the board, or his son, or that viper Victoria to know about." He opened a drawer and pulled out a file folder. It was thick, bound with a rubber band that looked ready to snap. "Arthur died 5 years ago. You remember?" "Of course," I said. "I was at the funeral. I stood in the back." "Arthur left a will," Silas said. "A specific one, but Victoria and your father presented a different version to the probate court. A version where everything went to Robert, with Victoria as the executor of the estate until he came of age, which, considering Robert is a man-child, means Victoria controls everything." "I know this," I said, impatience rising. "I received nothing. I expected nothing." "You received nothing because they buried the truth," Silas snapped. He pushed the folder toward me. "Open it." I hesitated, then opened the cover. The first document was a birth certificate, my birth certificate, but the names were wrong. Or rather, the father's name was right, Robert Amberton. But the mother's name was not Victoria. It was Elena Rossi. "Elena was an artist," Silas said, his voice softening. "She was the daughter of a stonemason who worked on the restoration of the Amberton estate in the early 90s. Robert fell in love with her, madly, truly, for the first and only time in his miserable life. Your father had a spine." I stared at the paper. The date of birth was mine. The location was a hospital in upstate New York. "Victoria was already in the picture," Silas continued. "A merger marriage arranged by Arthur's business partners. When Elena got pregnant, Victoria threatened to burn Robert's reputation to the ground. She threatened to have Elena arrested on trumped-up charges. Robert panicked. He broke. So he abandoned us," I whispered. "No," Silas corrected. "Elena died in childbirth, a complication that might have been prevented if she had been in a better hospital. But Victoria had ensured she was cut off from any Amberton resources. Robert was devastated. He wanted to claim you. Victoria saw an opportunity." I felt the blood drain from my face. "An opportunity. To control Robert forever," Silas said. "And to fix a public relations issue. They could not acknowledge you as his bastard child. It would ruin the merger. So, Victoria concocted the adoption narrative. She claimed they were adopting a poor orphan out of the kindness of their hearts. It made her look like a saint. It kept Robert under her thumb because she held the secret of your parentage over him like a knife, and it allowed her to bring you into the house where she could watch you, ensure you never learned the truth, and punish you for being the daughter of the woman her husband actually loved." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the page. The next document was a bank statement. This is where the key comes in, Silas said, pointing to the rusty key I had placed on his desk. Arthur knew. He found out about you when you were 5. He despised what Victoria had done. He could not undo the legal mess without destroying the company, so he set up a shadow trust. He funneled money into it for 20 years, millions of dollars, money meant for you. I have a trust, I said automatically. Victoria manages it. She says it barely covers my expenses. Silas let out a dry, barking laugh. The trust Victoria manages is a sham. It is a shell account she uses to move money around. The real money, your money, came from Arthur, and significantly, from Elena's family. It turns out the stonemason had patents on a specific stone-cutting tool. Elena was an heiress in her own right. Liana, not billionaire rich, but wealthy. When she died, that money went to you. He stood up and walked to a wall of filing cabinets. He used the key I had brought to open a heavy steel drawer. He pulled out a stack of ledgers and slammed them onto the desk. These are the forensic accounting records I've been compiling for 3 years, Silas said. Victoria gained power of attorney over Elena's estate by forging guardianship papers. For 30 years, she has been charging you for your own life. Every tuition payment, every doctor's visit, every meal you ate in that house, she paid for it out of your mother's money and told you it was her charity. She gaslit you into gratitude while she robbed you blind. I opened the ledger. Rows of numbers swam before my eyes. Tuition, $40,000. Summer camp, $8,000. Clothing allowance, $5,000. But then, the numbers got strange. Consulting fee, V. Amberton, $200,000. Management expense, $150,000. She has been siphoning it off, I realized, tracing the lines with my finger. She has been draining Elena's estate to fund her own lifestyle. And to cover Clarissa's gambling debts, Silas added. The Golden Child has a problem with online poker and high-stakes bridge. Victoria has drained nearly $4 million from your inheritance in the last 18 months alone to cover Clarissa's losses. I felt a cold rage settling in my chest, displacing the shock. Why tell me now? Why wait until 3 weeks before my birthday? Because of the timeline, Silas said grimly. Under the terms of the fraudulent guardianship Victoria set up, full control of the orphan's trust transfers to the guardian permanently if the ward is deemed financially incompetent by the age of 30, or if the funds are moved into a charitable foundation. He pulled out a glossy brochure. It was a mock-up for the Liana Amberton Foundation for Underprivileged Youth. This is her plan for your party, Silas explained. She is going to announce the launch of this charity. She will pressure you to sign over the remaining assets of the trust, about $12 million, into this foundation. She will be the director. You will be the figurehead. Once the money is in the foundation, she can use it for administrative costs, tax-free. It is a money laundering scheme, Liana, and she is going to make you sign the warrant for your own robbery as a birthday present. I sat back in the wooden chair. The creak of the wood sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I thought about the way Victoria looked at me when I bought my own car, the way she sneered at my job. It is good you are working. Liana, God knows you need to learn the value of $1 since you have none of your own. She had been spending my mother's money on Clarissa's designer handbags while I saved coupons to buy a blazer for an interview. What do I do? I asked. My voice was steady. The architect was back. I was looking at the structural failure, and I was already designing the demolition. Silas smiled. It was a terrifying expression on his weathered face. You have 2 options. You can sue her now. It will be tied up in court for 10 years. She will hide the assets, bribe the judges, and smear your name in the press. Or, Silas said, sliding a USB drive across the desk. You take this. It contains digital scans of every forged signature, every illegal transfer, and the original copy of Arthur's will, which explicitly states that if his lineage is concealed, the penalty clause activates. You wait, you let her build her stage, you let her invite the world to watch, and then, When she hands you that pen to sign away your future, you burn her house down. I took the USB drive. It was cold metal, small enough to swallow. One more thing, Silas said softly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It was old. The colors faded to sepia tones. It showed a young woman with dark, wild curls and eyes that looked exactly like mine, laughing as she held a paintbrush. She was looking at the person holding the camera with a look of such pure, unadulterated love that it hurt to look at. "That is Elena," Silas said, "and Robert took the photo. Keep it. It is the only proof you have that you were made from love, not obligation." I walked out of that office in Brooklyn a different person than the one who entered. The subway ride back to Manhattan was a blur. I sat squeezed between a construction worker and a tired nurse, clutching that USB drive in my pocket. For the last 3 weeks, I have played the part. I answered Victoria's calls with a meek voice. I let Clarissa mock my shoe choices. I nodded when Robert avoided my gaze. I went to work. I drew my blueprints. And I waited. Every time Victoria made a snide comment about how expensive the party was going to be, I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Every time Clarissa posted a photo of a new bracelet bought with stolen funds, I screenshotted it and added it to the file. They think they are throwing a party for a sheep. They have no idea they have invited the wolf. The flashback fades as the sound of applause brings me back to the present moment at L'Aube Dorée. Victoria is still at the microphone, beaming at the crowd. The envelope in my clutch feels heavier now that I remember the weight of the ledgers in Silas's office. I am not just fighting for money. I am fighting for the woman with the paintbrush. I am fighting for the little girl who thought she was broken. And I am fighting for the truth. Victoria raises her glass. "To Liana," she says, her eyes cold as ice. "To Liana." The room echoes. I pick up my glass. Yes, I think, to me, and I drink. The 2 weeks following my meeting with Silas Blackwood were an exercise in schizophrenic existence. By day, I was Liana the architect, designing sustainable housing grids and debating load-bearing walls with contractors. By night, I was Liana the auditor, dismantling the financial architecture of the Amberton family. I did not sleep. Sleep felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. I survived on black coffee and the cold. Sharp adrenaline of discovery. Silas had given me the skeleton of the fraud, but I needed to put flesh on the bones. I needed to understand the why. Greed is a powerful motivator, but Victoria was a woman who valued reputation above all else. Why risk a federal prison sentence for money she ostensibly already had? The answer, I discovered, lay in the digital footprint of my sister, Clarissa. I spent my nights trawling through the data Silas had decrypted. It did not take long to find the leak in the hull of the Amberton ship. Clarissa was not just a spender, she was a hemorrhage. I found accounts on offshore gambling sites hosted in Malta and Curaçao. The usernames were ridiculous Golden Girl 96 Princess Vi, Royal Flush C, but the IP addresses traced back directly to her penthouse in Soho and the family estate in Greenwich. The numbers were staggering. In the last 6 months alone, Clarissa had lost $350,000 playing online poker and virtual baccarat. She was chasing a high she could not catch. And Victoria was the one cleaning up the mess. I traced a wire transfer of $50,000 labeled tuition support from my trust fund to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. A quick search of that company revealed it was a debt collection agency for high-stakes gambling syndicates. My mother, my adoptive mother, was stealing the inheritance left to me by my biological mother to pay off the gambling debts of her biological daughter. It was a poetic, twisted symmetry that made me want to vomit. 10 days before the party, I drove to Greenwich. I told Victoria I needed to pick up some old winter coats for a charity drive. It was a lie, but Victoria loved anything that made the family look charitable without costing her a dime. So she waved me through the gates. The mansion, the gilded cage as I called it in my head, stood imposing against the gray sky. It smelled the same as it always did, lemon polish, lilies, and cold air. I walked up the grand staircase. my hand trailing on the banister. This house had never felt like a home. It felt like a museum where I was the exhibit labeled Benevolence. I went to my old room. It was now a guest suite, stripped of any personality I might have once imprinted on it, but I knew the hiding spots. I knelt by the radiator near the window and pried up the loose floorboard I had discovered when I was 7. It was still there. A small, dusty wooden box. Inside were the artifacts of a lonely childhood, a plastic soldier with a missing arm, a drawing of a house with a smiling sun that I had made in first grade, which Victoria had refused to put on the fridge because it clashed with the decor, and a small, stuffed rabbit with one ear torn off. I held the rabbit, feeling the coarse synthetic fur against my thumb. I remembered the day it was torn. Clarissa had wanted it. I said no. Victoria had snatched it from my hands, ripped the ear off, and thrown it in the trash, telling me that selfishness was a sin for a girl in my position. You own nothing, Liana. Everything you have is a gift from us. I put the rabbit in my bag. It was evidence. Not legal evidence, but emotional evidence. It was proof that their cruelty was not a new development. It was a foundational element of our relationship. Miss Liana. I turned. Standing in the doorway was Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper. She was nearing 70 now, her back bent, her hands trembling slightly. She was the only person in this house who had ever looked at me without calculation. "Hello, Mrs. Gable," I said, standing up and brushing the dust from my knees. She looked at the open floorboard, then at my bag. Her eyes softened. She closed the door behind her and stepped into the room, lowering her voice to a whisper. "I knew you would come back for the truth one day," she said. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you know?" "I was here," she said, her voice shaking. "When your father brought you home, you were so small. He was crying. He held you like you were made of glass. Victoria, she would not even look at you for the first month. She made me feed you. She made me hold you." "Did you know her?" I asked. "My mother, Elena," Mrs. Gable nodded, tears pooling in her rheumy eyes. "I met her once. She came to the gate, months before you were born. She was beautiful. Liana, she had a laugh that made you want to smile. She brought Robert a sketchbook. She loved him, and he loved her, but he was weak. He has always been weak." She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her skin was dry and warm. "Victoria told everyone you were an orphan, but I heard them fighting that first night. I heard Robert screaming that you had his eyes. I heard Victoria tell him that if he ever said her name, Elena's name again, she would destroy him." "Thank you," I whispered. "For the cookies, for hiding me when she was angry, for everything." "Be careful, child," Mrs. Gable warned. "She is cornered. Clarissa is bleeding them dry. Victoria is desperate, and a desperate woman is dangerous." I left Mrs. Gable and moved toward the master study. I knew Robert and Victoria were in there. I could hear their voices rising. I used the skills I had learned as a child, treading on the parts of the Persian rug that dampened sound. Avoiding the creaky floorboard in the hallway, I pressed myself against the wall, listening. "It is too much, Victoria." Robert's voice was slurring slightly. He was drunk. It was only 2 in the afternoon. "To do it on her birthday, to announce it like that, it is cruel." "Cruel?" Victoria's voice was sharp, a whip cracking. "Do you know what is cruel? Robert, bankruptcy is cruel. Losing this house is cruel. Your daughter, your precious Clarissa, has a marker out for $200,000 with people who break kneecaps for a living. We need access to the rest of the trust, and we need it now." "But Liana is a tool," Victoria hissed. "She always has been. She is the price you paid for your little affair. We fed her. We clothed her. She owes us, if she signs that trust over to the foundation. We can liquidate the assets, pay off Clarissa's debts, and refinance the company. It is the only way." "She might not sign," Robert mumbled. "She will sign," Victoria said, her voice dripping with venomous confidence. She is desperate for our approval. She has spent 30 years begging for a crumb of affection. I will give her a speech, a toast, maybe even a hug. She will sign anything I put in front of her." There was a pause. Then Victoria lowered her voice. Lethal and low. "And if you try to warn her, Robert, remember that I still have the medical records from '96. I know what really happened in that delivery room. Do you want Liana to know that you chose to save your reputation instead of saving Elena?" I stopped breathing. The hallway seemed to tilt. What happened in the delivery room? Silas had said Elena died of complications. Victoria was implying something darker, a choice. I backed away silently. My sadness evaporated. The lingering wish that my father might love me, that my mother might have some shred of humanity, vanished. In its place, a cold, hard structure of hatred was erected. It was steel-reinforced concrete. It was unbreakable. I did not just want my money back. I wanted to dismantle them. I wanted to take their reputation, their pride, and their lies, and bring it all down on top of their heads. I spent the next week preparing for the demolition. I went to a high-end spy shop in Chelsea, a place that usually catered to jealous spouses and corporate spies. I bought a voice recorder the size of a microchip. It was expensive, $500, but it had a battery life of 12 hours and could pick up a whisper from across a room. I sewed it into the lining of my clutch myself, testing it over and over again until I was sure it would work. I scanned every document Silas had given me, the birth certificate, the original will, the forensic accounting ledgers, the photos of Clarissa entering the casinos. I uploaded them to 3 different cloud servers with complex passwords. I sent encrypted copies to Silas and instructed him to release them to the press if anything happened to me. I was not taking chances. Then came the morning of the party. My phone buzzed. It was Clarissa. I stared at the screen, watching her name flash. The golden child. I picked up. "Hello, Clarissa." "Liana." Her voice was shrill, annoyed. "Mom says you are coming late. Don't be late. It looks tacky." "I have work." "Clarissa, some of us do." "Ugh, stop being such a martyr," she groaned. "Look, just try to look presentable, okay? There are going to be important people there. Mom is launching this charity thing for you, which is honestly huge. You should be grateful. Most adopted kids don't get a gala thrown for them. They get kicked out at 18. "I know," I said, my voice flat. "I am very grateful." "Good," she snapped. "And don't wear that awful gray blazer you love. Wear something that doesn't scream middle management. We are trying to sell an image here. Liana, don't ruin it." She hung up. I stood in the center of my apartment. It was a modest place, clean and bright, paid for with my own money. I looked at the dress hanging on the door, the charcoal silk. It did not scream middle management, it screamed dignity. I walked to the mirror. I looked at my reflection. I saw the dark eyes that belonged to Elena. I saw the chin that belonged to Arthur. I saw the woman who had survived 30 years of psychological warfare. Victoria was right about one thing. Liana the orphan, the grateful stray, the girl who begged for crumbs. She was weak. She was pathetic. I reached for my lipstick, a deep, blood-red shade I never wore. I applied it carefully, watching my mouth transform into a weapon. "She is dead," I told my reflection. My voice did not shake. "The girl named Liana who wanted a mommy is dead. She died this morning." I picked up the clutch with the recorder inside. I felt the weight of the papers against my palm. Tonight, I was not going to a birthday party. I was going to a demolition site, and I was the one holding the detonator. The spotlight cuts through the dim ambience of the ballroom like a surgical laser, pinning Victoria against the velvet backdrop of the stage. She stands there, a vision of carefully constructed maternal martyrdom, clutching the microphone with manicured fingers that glitter with diamonds paid for by my mother's stolen legacy. The air in the room is thick, recycled, and smells faintly of truffle oil and heavy floral perfumes. I sit at my exile table near the kitchen doors, my hands folded in my lap, feeling the small, hard outline of the voice recorder humming against my thigh through the fabric of my dress. Victoria clears her throat, a delicate, practiced sound that commands instant silence. Compassion, she begins, her voice trembling with an emotion that is entirely manufactured. It is a word we hear often, but few understand the weight of it. True compassion is not writing a check. It is opening your home. It is opening your heart to the unknown. She pauses for effect. The room is captivated. I see heads nodding in the semi-darkness. Beside the stage, Clarissa is holding her phone high, the screen illuminating her face with a ghostly blue light. She is live-streaming this performance to her thousands of followers, framing Victoria as the saint of Greenwich. I can imagine the comments rolling in, a cascade of heart emojis and praise for the woman who rescued the poor. Unfortunate orphan. When Robert and I decided to expand our family 30 years ago, Victoria continues, her eyes sweeping over the crowd but carefully avoiding mine. We were warned. We were told that taking in a child with unsure origins was a risk. We did not know her medical history. We did not know her lineage. We did not know what kind of blood ran in her veins. I feel a muscle in my jaw jump. Unsure origins. She talks about me as if I were a rescue dog with behavioral issues, not a human being. But we looked at that small, frightened thing, she says, gesturing vaguely in my direction. And we knew we had to do something. We could not just leave her to the system. It has been a long road, a hard road. There were days when the genetic differences were challenging, days when we wondered if love was enough to overcome nature. A few guests turned to look at me, their expressions a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. Among them, I see Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Vance, two of the managing partners from Vanguard Horizons. Victoria invited them. I see them exchanging uneasy glances. This is part of her strategy. By painting me as unstable, as a challenge, she has heroically managed for 3 decades. She is undermining my professional credibility. She is planting the seed that my success is fragile, that I am a ticking time bomb of bad genetics that might explode and ruin their architectural projects. I keep my face a mask of polite interest. Inside, the architect in me is analyzing the structure of her speech. She is laying the foundation of pity to support the heavy beam of humiliation she is about to drop. However, Victoria sighs, a tragic, beautiful sound. We persevered. We gave Liana everything, the best schools, the best clothes, a seat at our table. We tried to mold her, to polish the rough edges, and tonight, on her 30th birthday, we celebrate not just her survival, but our patience. There is a ripple of applause. It is polite, but uncertain. Even these socialites, accustomed to the theater of high society, can sense that something is off. The cruelty is leaking through the cracks in her performance. Victoria smiles, and the temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. But we believe in honesty in this family, she says, her voice becoming conspiratorial. She leans into the microphone, and there is a secret we have kept for 30 years, a little detail about how Liana came to be an Amberton. The room goes dead silent. The waiters stop moving. The clinking of silverware ceases. Victoria chuckles softly. You see, Liana was actually a business decision before she was a daughter. Back in 1996, our accountant was very concerned about our tax bracket. We needed a significant deduction, and as it turned out, adopting a ward of the state provided a very generous write-off. She pauses, waiting for the laughter. It comes, scattered and nervous, mostly from the table where Clarissa's friends are sitting. They giggle behind their hands, looking at me with undisguised amusement. Yes, Victoria continues, emboldened by the reaction. Liana was, effectively, a tax shield, a walking, talking deduction. We used to joke that she was the most profitable investment we made that year. My blood runs cold, then hot. The sheer audacity of it. She is reducing my existence, my entire life, to a line item on an IRS form. She is telling 100 people that I was not chosen for love, but for greed. But, she adds, waving a hand dismissively, we grew fond of her. In the way one grows fond of a stray cat that wanders onto the porch and refuses to leave, you feed it. You let it sleep in the garage. And eventually, it becomes part of the scenery, even if it never quite learns how to behave indoors. The cruelty is breathtaking. It is a physical blow. I see Mr. Henderson look down at his plate, clearly embarrassed. Robert, my father, drains his glass of scotch in one long swallow and signals frantically for another. He is shrinking into his chair, trying to make himself invisible. He hears her calling his daughter a stray animal, and he does nothing. His silence is louder than her words. So, Victoria says, her voice hardening, shifting from storytelling to business. Because we love her, and because we know her limitations, we have to make a difficult decision tonight, a decision for her own protection. She reaches under the podium and pulls out a document folder. As many of you know, the trust fund established for Liana matures today. It is a significant sum. However, given Liana's history, her struggles with understanding the complexities of wealth, her background, Victoria trails off, letting the implication hang there that I am too simple, too low-born to handle money. We cannot in good conscience let her burden herself with such responsibility. We have seen how she lives. She works so hard for so little. She does not understand how to manage capital. I almost laugh out loud. I manage multi-million-dollar construction budgets daily. I negotiate contracts that would make her head spin. But facts do not matter here. Only power matters. Therefore, Victoria announces, I have had our lawyers draw up a transfer agreement. Tonight, Liana will sign her trust fund over to the family foundation, which will be managed by her sister, Clarissa. Clarissa has been groomed for this. She understands the world of finance. She will ensure that Liana receives a modest monthly allowance, enough to keep her comfortable, without the risk of her squandering the principal. The room erupts in whispers. Transferring a 30-year-old woman's inheritance to her younger sister, it is unheard of. It is insulting. Clarissa beams, waving to the crowd like she has just won a beauty pageant. She steps up to the podium, standing next to her mother, the two of them, the predator and the parasite, united in their greed. Liana, darling, Victoria calls out, her voice echoing through the speakers. Come up here. Come to Mommy. The spotlight swings. It sweeps across the room, blinding guests, until it lands on me. I am blinded for a second. I blink, adjusting to the glare. I can feel every eye in the room on me. The pity, the judgment, the anticipation of my humiliation. They expect me to cry. They expect me to run. Or, worse, they expect me to walk up there with my head down and sign the paper like the obedient little charity case I have always been. I stand up. I smooth the front of my charcoal silk dress. I pick up my clutch. I make sure the magnetic clasp is secure, protecting the recorder that is capturing every word of this extortion attempt. I begin to walk. My heels click rhythmically on the parquet floor. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound is steady. I do not rush. I keep my chin high. I lock eyes with Victoria as I approach the stage. She smiles encouragingly, holding out a gold fountain pen. That is a good girl, she says into the microphone, treating me like a toddler taking her first steps. Do not be shy. Everyone is here to support you. I ascend the stairs to the stage. The heat from the lights is intense. It smells of hot dust and ozone. I am now standing next to them. I am taller than Victoria in my heels. I loom over her slightly. Victoria thrusts the document toward me. It is placed on a small lectern. I look down at it. It is exactly what Silas predicted. An irrevocable transfer of assets. A voluntary abdication of all rights to the Elena Rossi estate, renaming it the Amberton Family Fund. Just sign right there, sweetie, Victoria whispers, tapping the signature line with a manicured fingernail. And then we can cut the cake. Clarissa leans in, her phone camera inches from my face. Smile for the followers, Liana, she hisses. Try not to look so miserable. You are getting an allowance. That is more than you deserve. I look at the pen. It is a Mont Blanc, heavy, expensive. I look at the crowd. Mr. Henderson is watching me with a furrowed brow, waiting to see if his senior architect is truly the fool her mother claims she is. Robert is staring at his empty glass. I look at Victoria. Her eyes are hard, demanding compliance. She thinks she has won. She thinks the script is written, and I'm just reading my lines. I reach out and take the pen. Victoria's shoulders relax. She lets out a breath she was holding. She turns to the audience, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "See," she says to the crowd. "She knows what is best. We are a family that takes care of each other." I hold the pen in my right hand. In my left hand, I grip my clutch. I do not uncap the pen. Instead, I step closer to the microphone. The feedback whines slightly. "Thank you, Mother," I say. My voice is clear, steady, and amplified to fill every corner of the room. "Thank you for that illuminating introduction." Victoria frowns, her smile faltering slightly. "Just sign the paper, Liana." "I will," I say, turning to face the audience, making eye contact with the camera lens of Clarissa's phone. "But first, since we are sharing secrets about finances and taxes tonight, since we are being so honest about where the money comes from, I open my clutch. I do not take out a tissue. I do not take out a compact mirror. I pull out a folded sheaf of papers. The first one is a bank statement with the logo of a bank in the Cayman Islands. "I think we should discuss the definition of a tax write-off," I say into the microphone. "And while we are at it, we should discuss the definition of embezzlement." Victoria freezes. Her hand reaches out to grab my arm, but I step back, out of her reach. "What are you doing?" she hisses, her voice no longer amplified, but audible to the front row. "Get down from here." "No," I say, my voice booming. "You invited me to the stage. Victoria, you wanted a show. You wanted to talk about my value." I hold up the paper. "This is a bank statement," I announce to the room. "Dated 3 days ago. It shows a transfer of $50,000. I turn to Clarissa, who has lowered her phone, her mouth hanging open. "From my trust fund," I continue, "to an account linked to an illegal gambling syndicate in Malta, an account owned by the golden child standing right next to me." The silence in the room shatters. A collective gasp sucks the air out of the ballroom. I look at Victoria. Her face has drained of color. The mask is slipping. "You called me a tax write-off," I say, my voice dropping an octave. "Cold and dangerous. But it seems, Mother, that I am actually your personal piggy bank, and tonight the bank is closed." I drop the heavy Mont Blanc pen. It hits the wooden floor with a loud clatter. It rolls away, stopping at Robert's feet as he stares up at me, his eyes wide with horror and dawning realization. The stage is set, the actors are in place, and I have just set fire to the curtains. The silence that follows the clattering of the Mont Blanc pen against the hardwood floor is absolute. It is a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room. 100 pairs of eyes are fixed on the stage, widening in a collective state of processing. They are socialites, bankers, and sharks. They smell blood in the water. But for the first time in 30 years, they are realizing the blood might not be mine. Victoria stands frozen next to me. Her smile has become a rictus, a terrifying grimace of strained muscles and panic, up close, under the unforgiving glare of the stage lights. I can see the cracks in the porcelain. The heavy foundation settles into the lines around her mouth. Her breathing is shallow and rapid, a hummingbird trapped in a ribcage. She leans in toward me, to the audience. It might look like a concerned mother checking on a distraught daughter, but I can smell the sour tang of expensive champagne on her breath. "Pick up the pen," she whispers. Her voice is a razor blade wrapped in silk. "Pick it up, sign the paper, and get off my stage. Do not make me destroy you, you ungrateful little wretch." I turn my head slowly to look at her. I do not flinch. I do not lower my gaze. For the first time in my life, I look at Victoria Amberton, And I do not see a giant. I see a thief in a green dress. I offer her a smile. It is not the shy, apologetic smile I wore for 3 decades. It is a smile devoid of warmth, sharp enough to cut glass. It is a smile that says, I know. Destroy me, I ask. My voice low. Just for her. Victoria, you are standing on a trap door, and I am the one holding the lever. I turn back to the microphone. I adjust the stand, raising it slightly. It is a subtle power move, forcing Victoria to look up at me. Thank you, Mother, I say into the mic. My voice is calm, terrifyingly conversational. Thank you for that lesson on tax law. It was truly inspiring. It got me thinking about the nature of finances, about assets, and liabilities. I reach into my clutch again. The movement is deliberate. I can feel the tension in the room ratcheting up, tight as a piano wire. You mentioned that I was a write-off, I continue, addressing the crowd. I lock eyes with the senator in the front row. You mentioned that raising me was a burden, a financial strain that required the benevolence of the Amberton estate. I pull out a document. It is not a single sheet this time. It is a stapled packet. The pages thick and official. The header is visible to those in the front row, Banque Privée Suisse. However, I say, there is a small discrepancy in your narrative regarding the cost of my care. I unfold the document. The paper crinkles loudly in the silent room. This is a certified transaction history from a numbered account in Zurich, I announce. It is technically an anonymous account, but the wire transfers originating from the Liana Amberton Educational Trust are quite specific. Victoria makes a sound, a strangled gasp. She reaches for my arm. Liana, stop this. You are drunk. You are making a scene. I step to the side, smooth and fluid. She grabs empty air, stumbling slightly in her heels. The loss of physical composure makes her look weak, frantic. August 14th, 2016, I read aloud. A transfer of $250,000. The memo in the trust ledger says, Emergency medical procedure for Liana Amberton. I look out at the audience. I have never had surgery in my life. I have never even broken a bone. But, oddly enough, that same week, Victoria, you posted photos of your new yacht, the Sea Witch, being delivered to the harbor in Nice, a yacht that cost, coincidentally, $250,000. A murmur ripples through the crowd. It starts low, like the buzzing of bees, and grows louder. Theft is one thing. Stealing from an orphan to buy a yacht is a level of villainy that even this jaded crowd finds distasteful. November 3rd, 2018, I continue, flipping the page. My voice is relentless. $400,000 withdrawn for specialized boarding school tuition. I was 22 years old and working as an intern at Vanguard Horizons. I was not in boarding school. I was living in a studio apartment in Queens that I paid for myself. I look at Mr. Henderson. He is leaning forward, his face pale. He knows I'm telling the truth. He remembers that internship. He remembers how I wore the same 2 suits every day because I could not afford dry cleaning. Where did that money go? I ask rhetorically. Ah, yes. Here is the corresponding deposit in the Swiss account. It was then transferred to a diamond broker in Antwerp. Clarissa, isn't that when you got your engagement ring from that Italian count, the one who turned out to be a waiter? Clarissa screams. It is a high, piercing sound. Shut up, you liar. She frantically taps at her phone screen, trying to end the live stream, but clumsy fingers and panic are a bad combination. The phone slips from her hand and clatters onto the stage. It lands screen up. I can see the chat flying by, a blur of angry emojis and shocked comments. The internet is watching. The world is watching. She cannot delete a live broadcast that has already been screen recorded by thousands of strangers. And let us look at the total, I say, flipping to the final page of the summary Silas prepared. Over the last 10 years, under the guise of care expenses, administrative fees, and educational support, the total amount siphoned from the estate left to me by my biological mother Elena Rossi is. I pause. I let the number hang in the air before I speak it. $5,342,000. The gasp from the audience is audible. $5 million. That is not a mistake. That is not bad accounting. That is grand larceny. Victoria lunges. She abandons all pretense of grace. She lunges for the microphone, her face twisted into a snarl of pure rage. "Give me that," she shrieks. I anticipate the move. I learned to dodge her blows when I was 12. I simply step back and pivot. Victoria's momentum carries her forward. She crashes into the microphone stand, sending it wobbling. The feedback screeches a high-pitched wail that forces the guests to cover their ears. She catches herself on the podium, panting, her hair disheveled. She looks wild, dangerous. "Security!" she screams, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Remove her. She is mentally unstable. She is forging documents. Get her out of here." 2 security guards in black suits step forward from the back of the room. They look hesitant. They are looking at Robert. I look at Robert, too. My father. He is standing now. He is swaying slightly, but his eyes are fixed on Victoria. He looks at the woman who has controlled him for 30 years. Then he looks at me. He sees the documents in my hand. He sees the fire in my eyes. He raises a hand to the guards. "Stop." The guards freeze. I turn back to Victoria. I do not need the microphone stand anymore. The room is so quiet that a whisper would carry to the back wall. I hold the microphone in my hand like a gavel. "You called me an investment," I say, my voice ringing with cold, hard steel. "You told these people I was a tool to lower your taxes. You reduced my life to a transaction." I take a step toward her. She shrinks back, fear finally dawning in her eyes as she realizes the guards are not coming. "You were wrong about the math, Victoria," I say. "I am not a deduction. I am not a write-off." I hold up the Swiss bank statement one last time, then let it drop to the floor. It lands on top of the Mont Blanc pen. "I am the owner of the capital you stole," I declare, my voice echoing with finality. "And as of this moment, I am your creditor, and I have come to collect." The words hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. I can see the realization hitting the guests. The Amberton fortune is a house of cards, and I just pulled out the bottom layer. The charity case owns the debt. Victoria stares at me, her mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. She looks small. She looks old. The spotlight that was meant to glorify her now only serves to illuminate her ruin. I stand tall in my charcoal dress, the architect of her destruction, watching the first cracks appear in the facade she spent a lifetime building. This is not just revenge. This is a foreclosure. "Security!" Victoria screams again, her voice shredding the sophisticated atmosphere of the ballroom. She points a trembling finger at me, her face a mask of contorted rage. I said, "Get her out of here. She is trespassing. She is assaulting me." The 2 guards in black suits hesitate. They look at Victoria, who is frothing at the mouth, and then they look at me, standing calm and composed with a microphone in my hand. But mostly, they look at the man sitting at the head table. "Robert?" Victoria shrieks, slamming her hand on the podium. "Do not just sit there. Tell them to do their jobs." Robert Amberton stands up. The movement is slow, heavy, like a man waking from a coma that has lasted 30 years. He steadies himself on the table, knocking over a crystal water glass. It shatters, the sound sharp and final. He looks at the guards. He raises a hand, palm out. "Stand down," Robert says. His voice is raspy, unused, but it carries the weight of the name Amberton. "What?" Victoria gasps, whipping her head around to stare at him. "Have you lost your mind?" "I said stand down," Robert repeats, louder this time. He looks at his wife with eyes that are no longer glazed with alcohol, but clear with a sudden, terrified sobriety. "Let her speak." Victoria looks as if she has been slapped. She stumbles back against the velvet curtain, her mouth opening and closing in silent shock. The guards step back into the shadows, crossing their arms. I turn my attention away from the wreckage of their marriage and focus on the girl in the pink sequined dress. Clarissa is standing frozen near the edge of the stage, her phone still on the floor, broadcasting her humiliation to the world. "You called me a liar, Clarissa," I say, my voice projecting clearly through the speakers. "You told your followers I was jealous. You said I was ungrateful." I reach into my clutch and pull out a sleek, silver USB drive. I plug it into the laptop sitting on the podium, the very laptop Victoria had been using to project her heartwarming photos of my rescue. "Let us see who the real liar is," I say. I hit the enter key. The massive projection screen behind me flickers. The image of a smiling, benevolent Victoria fades. It is replaced by a gritty black and white video feed. The timestamp in the corner reads 2 weeks ago. The location tag, added by the private investigator, reads the Velvet Room, Lower East Side. A collective gasp ripples through the audience. The Velvet Room is not a club. It is an illegal underground casino known for high stakes and dangerous clientele. On the screen, Clarissa is sitting at a poker table. She looks disheveled, frantic. She is arguing with a man who has a tattoo of a spider on his neck. The audio is grainy but audible. "I am good for it." Clarissa's voice comes through the speakers, shrill and desperate. "My mother is Victoria Amberton. My sister has a trust fund coming due. I just need a bridge loan." On the screen, the man slides a piece of paper across the table. "Sign it," he says. "But not your name. I want the sister's name, the one with the credit score." The room watches in horrified fascination as Clarissa grabs the pen. The camera zooms in. The investigator did excellent work. We see her hand moving. We see her signing Liana Amberton with a flourish. "No!" Clarissa screams in the ballroom. She lunges for the laptop, trying to rip it out. That is fake. It is a deep fake. AI generated it. I catch her wrist before she can touch the computer. My grip is iron. I shove her back, and she falls onto her backside, a pile of pink sequins in panic. "It is not AI, Clarissa," I say coldly. "It is CCTV, footage authenticated by the NYPD Cybercrimes Division. I filed the police report this morning." I look out at the audience. The reaction is instantaneous. The senator is already on his feet, whispering furiously into his cell phone as he briskly walks toward the exit, his security detail flanking him. He is cutting ties before the scandal hits the morning news. Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Vance from Vanguard Horizons are packing up their bags. They look at me, then at Victoria, with expressions of absolute disgust. They are not leaving because of me. They are leaving because they realize they were dining with criminals. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announce, my voice cutting through the rising murmur of the crowd. That document my sister signed. It was a promissory note for $200,000, secured against my identity. That is called identity theft, and it is a felony. Clarissa is sobbing now, loud, ugly tears, smearing her makeup. "Mom told me it was okay. She said the money was technically ours anyway. She said you were just holding it." "Shut up, you idiot," Victoria hisses, lunging to cover Clarissa's mouth. "Stop talking." But the damage is done. The guests are fleeing the ballroom like it is on fire. The waiters are backing away against the walls, unwilling to be part of the collateral damage. I turn my back on the sobbing sister and face the man who is still standing at the head table. "And now, Father," I say. I drop the formal title. I look him dead in the eye. "It is time for you to stop being a puppet." Robert flinches. He grips the edge of the table. "Tell them," I command. "Tell them the truth about the adoption. Tell them why I was a tax write-off." Robert opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. He looks at Victoria. She is staring at him with eyes that promise murder. If he will not say it, I will, I declare. I pull the final document from my clutch. It is old. The paper is yellowed, fragile. It is protected by a plastic sleeve. "This," I say, holding it up to the light, "is my original birth certificate, the one that was sealed by a corrupt judge in 1996. I project the scanned image onto the big screen. replacing the video of Clarissa. The document is huge, and the names on it are clear. Mother Elena Rossi, Father Robert Amberton. The remaining guests stop moving. The silence returns, heavier than before. I am not an orphan, I say, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. I was not a random child picked from a lineup. I am Robert Amberton's biological daughter. I turn to Victoria. She is leaning against the podium, looking as if she might faint. You lied to the world, I accuse her. You told everyone I was a charity case. You let people whisper that I was bad stock. You let me believe I was unwanted trash that you graciously allowed to live indoors. I walk toward her, step by step. But the truth is much uglier, isn't it? Victoria, I ask. Grandfather Arthur hated you. He hated what you did to the company. So he wrote a will that stated that the bulk of the Amberton fortune would skip your generation and go directly to Robert's biological children. I turn back to the audience, explaining the mechanism of the crime. But there was a problem. I was the biological child, and my mother, Elena, was the woman Robert loved. If I was acknowledged as his legitimate heir, Victoria would lose control of the estate. She would be just the wife, with no claim to the ancestral wealth. So she made a deal, I say, pointing at Robert. She forced my father to sign a renunciation of paternity. She forced him to legally declare me a ward of the state so that she could adopt me back as a stranger. By doing that, she severed my legal biological link to Arthur Amberton, bypassing the grandfather clause in the will. That is a lie, Victoria screams, but her voice is thin, weak. It is fraud, I shout back, my voice booming. It is federal fraud. You falsified vital records. You perjured yourself in family court. You kidnapped a child from her birthright and then charged her for the privilege of living in her own house. The room is in chaos. People are recording with their phones openly now. The veneer of polite society has completely dissolved. They are witnessing a crime scene. You made me feel small, I say, standing inches from Victoria's face. You made me feel lucky to have a roof over my head, all while you were living in my house, spending my inheritance, wearing my money around your neck. Victoria looks around for an ally, for someone to save her. She looks at her friends, but they are averting their gaze. She looks at Clarissa, who is a sobbing mess on the floor. She looks at Robert. Robert, she pleads. Tell her we did it to protect her. Robert looks at me. He sees the woman I have become. He sees the resemblance to Elena that he has tried to drown in scotch for 30 years. No, Robert says. His voice is quiet, broken, but audible. We did it to protect you, Victoria. We did it because you threatened to destroy Elena's reputation even after she was dead. The confession hangs in the air. The final nail in the coffin. You monster, a woman in the front row whispers. It is the same woman who had earlier called me bad stock. Now, she looks at Victoria with unmasked revulsion. Get away from me, Victoria screams, swiping at the air as if surrounded by bees. I am the victim here. I raised her. I fed her. You fed me with my own money, I retort. And now, the bill is due. I look at the security guards again. Gentlemen, I say coolly, I believe there is a criminal trespassing on my property, and I believe the police are waiting outside. As if on cue, the wail of sirens cuts through the night air, growing louder and louder as they approach the entrance of L'Aube Dorée. The flashing red and blue lights begin to dance across the high windows, painting Victoria's face in the colors of her impending arrest. She looks at the lights. She looks at me. And for the first time, the Queen of Greenwich looks small. She looks like exactly what she is, a fraud in a stolen dress. The sirens are wailing outside, a chaotic symphony of red and blue washing over the velvet drapes. But inside the ballroom, the atmosphere has shifted from the heat of a scandal to the cold, solemn gravity of a courtroom. The air feels heavy, charged with a history that has been buried for 3 decades. I stand alone on the stage, the debris of my mother's lies scattered around my feet. the bank statements, the promissory note, the broken Mont Blanc pen. But I have one more thing to show them. One last piece of paper that does not belong to the world of forensic accounting or criminal investigation. It belongs to the world of ghosts. I reach into my clutch for the final time. My fingers brush against the parchment. It feels different from the crisp, modern bank statements. It is textured, slightly brittle, carrying the weight of time. This is not a weapon I forged. It is a shield that was crafted for me before I could even speak. Victoria, I say softly. I do not need to shout anymore. The room is so quiet that the sound of a champagne bubble popping would sound like a gunshot. You thought you were playing a game of chess against a child? You forgot that the board was built by Arthur Amberton. At the mention of my grandfather's name, Robert lifts his head. His eyes are red-rimmed, swimming with a mixture of shame and a strange, dawning hope. He knows his father. He knows that Arthur Amberton was a man who never left a loose end untied. I pull the document out. It is encased in a protective mylar sleeve. The edges are yellowed, the ink faded to a rusty brown, but the signature at the bottom is bold, aggressive, and unmistakable. This, I announce to the silent room, is the codicil to the last will and testament of Arthur Amberton. It was drafted 5 years ago, 2 days before he died. It was filed in a sealed trust in the Cayman Islands, to be opened only upon the occurrence of a specific event. Victoria is shaking her head, a erratic, twitching motion. No, she whispers. There is no codicil. I saw the will. I was the executor. You saw the public will, I correct her. The one you manipulated, but grandfather knew you. Victoria, he knew your greed, and he knew your cruelty. He knew that one day you would not be content with just stealing my money. He knew you would want to destroy my spirit. I hold the paper up to the light. Clause 19, I read aloud. My voice trembles slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming emotion of reading words written by a man who loved me when no one else did. The dead hand provision. I take a breath. I need everyone to hear this. I need the words to sink into the marrow of their bones. I, Arthur Amberton, being of sound mind, hereby decree that the entirety of the Amberton estate, including the Greenwich property, the Vanguard Horizons holdings, and all liquid assets, are held in conditional stewardship by my son, Robert, and his wife, Victoria. I pause. I look at Victoria. She is gripping the podium so hard her acrylic nails are digging into the wood. However, I continue, reading the script that seals her fate, should at any point in time the true lineage of my granddaughter, Liana, be revealed by said guardians for the purpose of public humiliation, financial leverage, or social exclusion should they ever weaponize her birth against her. I lower the paper and look directly into the camera lens of the phone that is still broadcasting to the world. Then the conditional stewardship is immediately and irrevocably revoked. The entirety of the estate shall bypass the next generation and revert instantly to the sole ownership of Liana Amberton. The gasp that goes through the room is not one of scandal this time. It is one of awe. It is the sound of people witnessing a miracle of legal vengeance. He called it the humiliation clause, I say, my voice thick with emotion. He knew you, Victoria. He knew that you could not keep the secret forever. He knew that eventually your vanity would outweigh your caution. He knew you would try to use my birth as a punchline. Victoria lets out a sound that is half scream, half sob. That is not legal. You cannot enforce a will based on a speech. Actually, she can... The voice comes from the back of the room. It is a voice like grinding stones, deep and ancient. The double doors of the ballroom swing open. Framed in the doorway, leaning on an ebony cane, is Silas Blackwood. He is wearing a tweed suit that looks like it smells of pipe tobacco and justice. Flanking him are 4 officers from the Economic Crimes Division of the New York Police Department, and 2 men in sharp gray suits carrying briefcases. Silas walks forward. The crowd parts for him like the Red Sea. He moves slowly, his cane tapping a rhythm on the floor. Tap, Tap, tap. He walks all the way to the stage and stops in front of Victoria. He does not look at her. He looks at me. He nods, a small, proud gesture. Mr. Blackwood, Victoria stammers. She looks terrified. She remembers him. Everyone remembers Silas. He was the man who buried the bodies, figuratively speaking, for the old guard. Mrs. Amberton, Silas says. His voice is cold. I am here to enforce the transition of assets. He gestures to the men in gray suits. They step forward and place a stack of files on the table where Robert is sitting. As of 20 minutes ago, Silas announces, his voice projecting to the entire room. When you publicly declared Liana's adoption status as a tax strategy, a statement recorded by hundreds of witnesses and broadcast live on the internet, you triggered Clause 19. Silas turns to face the room. The deed to the Greenwich mansion has been electronically transferred. The controlling shares of Vanguard Horizons have been reassigned. The frozen bank accounts in Zurich, the Cayman Islands, and New York have been consolidated. He turns back to Victoria. You are no longer the mistress of this house. You are a guest. And considering the police officers behind me, soon to be a detainee. Victoria collapses. It is not a theatrical faint. Her legs simply give out. She slides down the front of the podium, a heap of emerald silk and ruined ambition. She looks up at me, her eyes wide, vacant, unable to comprehend the magnitude of her loss. My house, she whispers. My company. I step down from the raised platform of the stage. I walk over to where she is crumpled on the floor. I tower over her, just as she towered over me for 30 years. It was never your house, Victoria, I say quietly. You were just the squatter. I lean down, bringing my face close to hers. You wanted to talk about taxes. You wanted to make me a deduction. Well, congratulations, Mother. You got your wish. I smile, and it feels like the sun breaking through a storm. Because as of right now, you have zero income, you have zero assets, you have nothing to declare. You are finally, truly, tax-exempt. From the head table, a sound erupts. It is a laugh, a choked, sobbing, hysterical laugh. We all turn. Robert Amberton is shaking. Tears are streaming down his face, soaking into his expensive collar. He is laughing and crying at the same time, his body convulsing with it. He knew, Robert chokes out. Dad knew. He knew I was too weak to leave you. He knew I could never protect her on my own. Robert stands up. He looks at me, and for the first time in my life, I see a father. I see the man who loved Elena. Thank you, Robert says to the ceiling, to the ghost of Arthur Amberton. Then he looks at me. He set the trap, Liana, but you were the one brave enough to spring it. He wipes his face with a napkin, but the tears keep coming. I am free, he whispers. I am broke. I have lost everything, and I have never felt more free. It is a poignant moment, a moment of raw human redemption, but it is shattered in a heartbeat. No, Clarissa screams. She scrambles up from the floor, her eyes wild, her makeup smeared into a grotesque mask. She looks at her mother broken on the floor. She looks at her father laughing in relief, and her mind snaps. She realizes her reality, the shopping trips, the status, the immunity is gone. She launches herself at me. You witch, she screams, her fingers curled into claws, aiming for my face. Give it back to me, it is mine. I do not move, I do not flinch, because I am not alone anymore. Before she can reach me, two large hands grab her arms, the security guards, the same men Victoria hired. The same men who have worked for the Amberton estate for years have stepped in. They are not protecting Victoria anymore. They know who signs the checks now. That is enough, Miss Clarissa, the head of security says firmly, pinning her arms behind her back. Let me go, Clarissa thrashes, kicking her legs, her pink sequins flashing like frantic warning lights. I am Clarissa Amberton. I am the heiress. Actually, I say, looking at her struggling form, You are currently trespassing on private property, my property. I look at the head of security. Escort her to the side, please, but do not kick her out yet. The police need a statement regarding the identity theft. Yes, Ms. Amberton, the guard says. He emphasizes the Ms. Amberton. The transfer of loyalty is complete. Clarissa is dragged away, screaming obscenities, her heels scraping uselessly against the floor. I turn back to the room. The guests are no longer just watching. They are documenting. Phones are held high, recording the fall of the dynasty. I see flashes of light reflecting off the chandeliers. This footage will be on the news within the hour. The social destruction of Victoria and Clarissa will be absolute, but I do not care about the cameras. I turn to Silas. The old lawyer is watching me with a look of profound sadness and pride. He would have been proud of you, Liana, Silas says, his voice low. Arthur, and Elena. I feel a lump rise in my throat. I look down at the yellowed paper in my hand. Clause 19. It was not just a legal document, it was a love letter. It was a promise from a grandfather I barely knew that I would not be abandoned. I walk over to Robert. He is still standing by the table, looking lost. I do not hug him. We are not there yet. There are 30 years of silence between us, but I reach out and place my hand on his arm. It is over, Dad, I say. He looks at my hand on his sleeve. He covers it with his own shaking hand. I am sorry, he whispers. I am so sorry. I know, I say, and I mean it. I look back at Victoria. She is still on the floor, staring at nothing. The police officers are moving toward her now, handcuffs glinting in the stage lights. The party is over. The balloons are popping. The cake is uncut. But as I stand there, holding the deed to my life in one hand and my father's arm in the other, I realize that this is the best birthday present I could have ever received. I have not just inherited a fortune, I have inherited the truth. The transition from a high society birthday gala to a crime scene is a jarring, discordant shift, like a symphony orchestra suddenly being replaced by the screeching of metal on metal, the ballroom of L'aube dorée. Moments ago, a sanctuary of polite conversation and clinking crystal has devolved into a spectacle of controlled chaos, the illusion of perfection, so carefully curated by Victoria for 3 decades, has not just cracked, it has shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, much like the glass that is about to cover the floor. The 2 police officers from the Economic Crimes Division move with the practiced efficiency of men who have seen this scenario played out in boardrooms and penthouses before. They do not care about the vintage of the wine or the pedigree of the guests. They care about the warrant in their hands. One of the officers, a stern woman with hair pulled back in a tight bun, steps up to Victoria. Victoria is still on the floor, surrounded by the emerald folds of her dress, looking like a fallen queen in a Shakespearean tragedy. Victoria Amberton, the officer says, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and falsification of vital records. You have the right to remain silent. The officer reaches down and pulls Victoria to her feet. The movement is not gentle. It is the impersonal handling of a suspect. The metallic click-click of the handcuffs engaging around Victoria's wrists is a sound so foreign to this environment that it causes several guests to physically flinch. Victoria stares at the steel cuffs binding her wrists. For a second, she is catatonic. Then, the reality of her situation pierces through the shock, and the rage takes over. She begins to thrash, pulling against the officer's grip with a strength born of pure, unadulterated desperation. Get your hands off me, Victoria screams, her voice raw and scraping against her throat. Do you know who I am? I am Mrs. Robert Amberton. You cannot do this. This is a mistake. It is a setup. She spins around, her wild eyes locking onto me. I am standing just a few feet away, watching the dismantling of my oppressor with a calmness that surprises even me. You, Victoria spits the word at me like a curse. You did this. After everything I did for you, I took you in. I gave you a name. And this is how you repay me. You ungrateful, venomous little snake. Her face is twisted, ugly with hatred. The mask of the benevolent mother has completely disintegrated, revealing the narcissist beneath. I should have left you in that orphanage. I should have let you rot. You are nothing but a parasite. I look at her. I look at the woman who taught me to fear my own shadow. I look at the woman who made me apologize for existing. And I feel nothing. No fear, no sadness. Just a cold, hard clarity. You are right, Mother, I say, my voice steady and loud enough for the officers to pause. I am a snake, but you seem to forget who raised me in the pit. I take a step closer, looking down at her handcuffed hands. I learned how to strike from you. Victoria, I learned how to wait. I learned how to hide my true intentions behind a smile. You call me ungrateful. I am simply applying the education you gave me. I learned from the best. Victoria lets out a guttural shriek of frustration, lunging at me. But the officer jerks her back. That is enough, ma'am. Walk. While Victoria is being wrangled, another drama is unfolding near the exit. Clarissa, having been dragged to the side by security, is now trying to bargain with the air. But her problems are about to compound. Two men in dark, ill-fitting suits have emerged from the shadows near the kitchen entrance. They are not guests. They are not police. They look like sharks in human skin. They are the kind of men who do not send invoices. They send messages. They approach the security guards holding Clarissa. One of them, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, flashes a piece of paper. It is not a warrant. It is a debt ledger. Miss Clarissa Amberton, the man says. His voice is smooth, oily. We saw the live stream, very entertaining, but seeing as your assets are currently being frozen by the state, my employer is very concerned about the liquidity of his $200,000. Clarissa's eyes bulge. She recognizes them. No, she whimpers, shrinking back against the security guard. Not here. Please, not here. The interest rate just went up, sweetheart, the man says, grinning to reveal teeth that look too sharp. We will be waiting outside. Do not make us come to the police station. Clarissa begins to hyperventilate. The walls are closing in on her from all sides, the law on one hand, the underworld on the other. She looks at me, pleading silently for help, for the sister she mocked an hour ago to save her. I turn away. That is not my burden to carry. She signed the papers. She played the games. She can win her own prizes. I turn my attention back to the center of the room. Robert Amberton is walking toward me. He looks like a man who has aged 10 years in 10 minutes. His shoulders are hunched, his face gray and drawn. He stops in front of me, his hands trembling by his sides. The room goes quiet again, watching the father and daughter. Slowly, painfully. Robert lowers himself. He sinks down onto one knee, then the other, until he is kneeling on the hardwood floor in front of me, his expensive suit pants straining against his knees. He bows his head. Liana, he chokes out, his voice thick with tears. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I was a coward. I let them hurt you. I let them erase Elena. Please forgive me. It is a pitiful sight. The patriarch of the Amberton family, groveling at the feet of the daughter he abandoned. A few guests whisper, covering their mouths. They think this is touching. They think this is redemption. It is not. It is embarrassing. I reach down and grab Robert by the elbows. My grip is firm. I pull upward. Stand up, I command. He resists slightly, wanting to stay in his penance. No, I deserve... I said stand up. I snap, my voice cracking like a whip. Robert scrambles to his feet, looking at me with wide, fearful eyes. Do not kneel to me, I say, my voice low and fierce. I do not want your submission. Dad, I do not want a servant. I have spent 30 years watching you act like a whipped dog for Victoria. I will not have you act like one for me. I release his arms and step back, creating a boundary between us. If you want forgiveness, I tell him. You do not get it by begging on the floor. You earn it. You start acting like a father. You start acting like a man who has a spine. Stand up and live like a human being, or get out of my sight. Robert nods, swallowing hard. He straightens his tie. He wipes his eyes. He stands a little taller. Okay, he whispers. Okay. I turn away from him. I have one final piece of business to conduct before the curtain falls. I look at Victoria, who is still fighting the officers near the edge of the stage. I look at Clarissa, who is cowering near the door. Listen to me, I shout, addressing the entire room, but specifically the two women who made my life a hell. The deed to the Greenwich estate has been transferred, I announce. It is now my legal property, and I am exercising my right as the homeowner. I point at the exit. Victoria, Clarissa, you are evicted. Effective immediately. Victoria freezes. You cannot do that, she gasps. My clothes, my jewelry. Everything inside that house was bought with funds from the Elena Rossi estate or the Amberton Trust, I state coldly. Therefore, it belongs to me. You leave with what is on your back. If you try to enter the property, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Again. You cannot throw me out on the street. Clarissa wails. You have legs, I reply. Walk. The finality of it hits Victoria. The house, the status, the clothes, it is all gone. She looks around the room, frantic, looking for something to destroy, some way to inflict one last wound. Her eyes land on the champagne tower. It is a masterpiece of crystal engineering, 6 feet tall, hundreds of glasses stacked in a delicate pyramid, filled with the vintage 1982 champagne she ordered, with a scream of pure, animalistic rage. Victoria breaks free from the officer's grip for a split second. She flings herself at the table. If I cannot have it, no one can, she shrieks. She slams her handcuffed wrists into the base of the tower. The sound is deafening. It is not just a crash, it is a cascade. Hundreds of crystal glasses shatter in unison. The sound of breaking glass echoes like a landslide. Champagne explodes outward, a tidal wave of golden liquid frothing and foaming, drenching Victoria, the officers, and the front row of guests. Shards of glass fly everywhere, glittering in the stage lights like deadly confetti. The golden liquid pools on the floor, mixing with the debris. It looks like the wreckage of a decadent civilization. Victoria stands in the middle of the ruin, her hair plastered to her face with champagne, her dress soaked and ruined. She is panting, heaving, standing in a lake of wasted wealth. The officer grabs her again, roughly this time, spinning her around. That is assault on an officer. Add it to the list. They drag her away. She slips on the wet floor, her heels skidding on the glass and wine. She is hauled out of the ballroom, screaming curses, a wet, miserable mess. Clarissa is shoved out behind her, sobbing into her hands. The heavy double doors swing shut behind them with a definitive thud. Silence descends on the room again. The only sound is the dripping of champagne from the tablecloths onto the floor. Drip, drip, drip. I stand on the stage, looking at the closed doors. I feel light, but it is a strange lightness. It is not the euphoric joy I expected. It is the hollow, ringing sensation of a bomb having gone off. The enemy is destroyed. Yes, but the battlefield is scarred. I look out at the guests. They are frozen, staring at me. These are the same people who, an hour ago, were whispering about my bad stock. The same people who laughed when Victoria called me a tax write-off. Suddenly, a man in a tuxedo starts clapping. It is slow at first, then faster. Then another person joins in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room is applauding. They rush toward the stage. Liana, darling. It is the woman with the diamonds. That was magnificent, absolutely brave. I always knew there was something special about you, a banker says, thrusting his business card at me. We should do lunch. I have some investment ideas for your new portfolio. Ms. Amberton, a socialite coos, reaching out to touch my arm. You must come to my gala next week. We would love to honor you. They swarm around me like moths to a new flame. Their smiles are wide, their eyes bright with avarice. They do not see me. They see the deed to the Greenwich mansion. They see the controlling shares of Vanguard Horizons. They see a winner. I look at their faces. I see the fakeness etched into every line. They are vultures. They feasted on my humiliation when Victoria served it, and now they want to feast on my triumph. I feel a wave of nausea. I raise the microphone one last time. Stop, I say. The applause dies down. They look at me expectantly. This party was supposed to be a birthday celebration, I say, my voice flat. But the girl whose birthday it was does not exist anymore. You killed her. I look at the banker holding his card. You laughed when she called me a stray. I look at the socialite. You whispered that I was dirty. I do not want your business cards. I tell them. I do not want your lunch invitations, and I certainly do not want your fake admiration. I gesture to the waiters, who are standing by the walls, looking terrified. Open the bar, I command. Pour everything, the vintage wines, the reserves, everything. I turn back to the crowd. You are welcome to stay, I say. Drink the wine, eat the food. It is all paid for with my money anyway. I drop the microphone on the floor. But do not call this a birthday party, I say, stepping off the stage and walking through the parting crowd toward the exit. Call it a freedom party and enjoy it, because after tonight, none of you are ever setting foot in my house again. I walk past Robert, who is standing by the shattered champagne tower, looking at his reflection in a puddle of wine. I do not stop. I push open the doors and walk out into the cool night air of Manhattan. Behind me, the party restarts, louder and more frantic than before. But I'm not listening. The silence in my head is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. It is 3:00 in the morning when the final curtain rises on the Amberton tragedy. The guests have long since dispersed, scattering into the Manhattan night with their bellies full of vintage wine and their phones full of viral content. The freedom party at L'Aube Dorée is over, and the silence that has settled over the Greenwich estate is heavy, thick with the ghosts of the last 30 years. I am standing in the Grand Library, a room I was forbidden to enter as a child because Victoria claimed my clumsy hands would ruin the first editions. Now, I own every book on the shelves. The air smells of old paper, mahogany, and the faint, lingering scent of my grandfather's pipe tobacco. Though he has been gone for 5 years, Robert sits in a leather armchair near the fireplace. The fire is dead, just a pile of cold ash. Much like his marriage, he is holding a glass of water, his hand shaking so violently that the water ripples in concentric circles. Silas Blackwood stands by the window, peering out into the darkness, his silhouette a comforting monolith of justice. We are waiting for the police to finish their final sweep of the grounds. They are documenting the inventory, ensuring that when Victoria and Clarissa are officially barred from the premises, nothing of value has been taken. You should sleep, Liana, Silas says, turning from the window. The locks have been changed. The security team has been replaced with my own men. You are safe. I do not feel safe, I admit, running my hand along the edge of the heavy oak desk. Not yet. A cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. Silas, and we just backed a tiger into a cage. She is in a holding cell at the precinct, Robert whispers, his voice hoarse. She will not get out, not with the federal charges. She has friends, I counter. She has favors she can call in. Judges she has bribed, senators she has charmed. Do not underestimate her survival instinct, Dad. As if summoned by my words, a sound shatters the stillness of the night. It is the sound of the front door, the heavy, reinforced oak door being slammed open with a violence that shakes the floorboards. Liana! The scream echoes through the foyer, bouncing off the marble walls. It is a voice I know better than my own heartbeat. It is Victoria. Silas moves instantly, placing himself between me and the door. Robert drops his glass. It hits the rug with a dull thud, water soaking into the Persian wool. "How did she get in?" Robert stammers, standing up. "The codes, we changed the codes." "She did not use a code," I say, listening to the frantic clicking of heels on the marble. "She broke in." Victoria bursts into the library. She is a terrifying sight. The elegant socialite who stood on the stage at L'Aube Dorée is gone. In her place is a woman unraveled. Her emerald dress is torn at the hem, stained with the champagne she destroyed and the grime of a holding cell. Her hair is wild, a blonde halo of madness. Her makeup runs in black streaks down her face, making her look like a weeping gargoyle. But it is not her appearance that freezes the blood in my veins. It is what she is holding. In her right hand, she grips a silver revolver, Robert's antique Smith & Wesson, which usually sits in the display case in the study. In her left hand, she holds a red canister. I can smell the fumes from here. Gasoline. "Victoria," Silas says, his voice calm, authoritative. "Put it down. You are making this worse." "Worse," Victoria laughs. "It is a broken, jagged sound." "How can it get worse? Silas, I am ruined. My face is on every news channel in the world. My accounts are frozen. My friends are blocking my number. I have nothing." She raises the gun, wavering between me and Robert. "I paid the bail bondsman with my diamond earrings," she sneers. "The last thing I owned, just to get back here. Just to look you in the eye one last time. Get out, Victoria," I say. I do not step back. I stand my ground behind the desk. The police are still on the perimeter. They will be here in seconds. "Let them come," she screams, uncapping the gasoline can. She splashes the liquid onto the expensive books, onto the rug, onto the hem of her own ruined dress. The smell is overpowering, sharp and chemical. "If I cannot live in this house, Liana, then you will burn in it with me. I will not let a mongrel bitch inherit my kingdom." Robert steps forward, his hands raised in surrender. "Victoria, please, look at me. This is madness. You need help." "Help?" She spins on him, the gun pointing directly at his chest. "You spineless coward. You let her do this. You let her humiliate me. You should have strangled her in the crib like I told you to." Robert flinches as if struck. "You told me to?" "Of course I did." Victoria rants, her eyes manic. "When you brought that thing home, I told you it was a mistake. I told you she was bad blood. But no, you had to play the grieving father. You had to honor your precious Elena." I feel a cold resolve settle over me. This is it, the final confrontation. I reach into my pocket. I do not have a weapon. I have something far more destructive. I pull out my phone. It is connected to the high-fidelity sound system of the library via Bluetooth. I had prepared this file weeks ago, retrieved from the same digital archive Silas had given me, but I had hoped I would never have to use it. It was the nuclear option. "You talk about Elena as if she were a stranger," I say, my voice cutting through Victoria's hysteria. "But you knew her, didn't you?" "Victoria, you knew her quite well." "I never met the whore," Victoria spits. "Liar," I say. I press play. The speakers hidden in the bookshelves crackle to life. The sound is grainy, recorded on an old answering machine tape from 1996. But the audio has been digitally enhanced. A woman's voice fills the room. It is weak, breathless, ragged with pain. "Victoria, is that you? Please do not hang up." Robert lets out a strangled gasp. He knows that voice. It is the voice that has haunted his dreams for 30 years. It is Elena. Victoria freezes. The gasoline can hangs limply in her hand. Her eyes dart to the speakers. "Please," the voice continues, sobbing now. "The contractions are too close. The bleeding will not stop. Robert is not answering his pager. You said you would help if I stayed away from him. Please, call the ambulance. I cannot reach the phone. Help me." There is a pause on the recording. Then, Victoria's voice cuts in. It is younger, smoother, but unmistakably her. I am sorry, Elena, but this is for the best. Robert can never be free while you are alive, and neither can I. Victoria, please, the baby. Goodbye, Elena. Click. The recording ends. The silence that follows is absolute. It is the silence of a tomb. I look at Victoria. She did not die of complications, I say, my voice trembling with the horror of the truth. She bled to death on her kitchen floor because you intercepted her call. You blocked the ambulance service from entering the gated community where you had stashed her. You let her die. No, Victoria whispers. She is shaking her head, backing away. That is fake. You made that up. It is from the private archives of the answering service you used, Silas says, his voice like a judge passing a death sentence. Arthur found it before he died. He was investigating you. That is why he changed the will. He knew you were a murderer. I look at Robert. He is no longer the broken man in the armchair. He is no longer the coward who drank to forget. He is standing rigid, his face drained of all color, his eyes fixed on Victoria with a look of pure, unadulterated horror. You killed her, Robert whispers. It is not a question. You let her die, and you let me believe it was my fault. You let me believe I arrived too late. Robert, listen to me, Victoria pleads, raising the gun again, but her hand is shaking. She was ruining our life. She was going to take the company I did it for us. There is no us, Robert roars. It happens in a blur of motion. Robert Amberton, the man who never raised a hand in anger, the man who spent a lifetime avoiding conflict, launches himself across the room. He moves with the desperate speed of a man who has nothing left to lose. Robert, no, I scream. Victoria shrieks and pulls the trigger. Bang! The gunshot is deafening in the enclosed space. A vase on the mantel explodes into dust. She missed. Robert crashes into her. The impact sends them both sprawling onto the gasoline-soaked rug. The gun skitters across the floor, sliding under the sofa. The lighter fluid canister flies from Victoria's hand. Clattering against the wall, they struggle on the floor. Victoria is clawing at his face, screaming like a banshee, biting and scratching, but Robert does not let go. He pins her arms to the floor, his weight holding her down. You killed her. Robert is screaming, his tears mixing with the blood from the scratches on his cheek. You killed the only thing I ever loved. Get off me, Victoria screeches. I did it. Yes, I did it, and I would do it again. She was a nobody. She deserved to die. The doors to the library burst open again. Police don't move. 4 officers rush in, guns drawn. They see Robert pinning Victoria. They see the gasoline. They smell the fumes. Silas steps forward, raising his hands. The man is subduing a hostile intruder, he states quickly and clearly. She is armed and confessed to a homicide. The officers pull Robert off Victoria. He collapses back, sobbing, his energy spent. 2 officers flip Victoria onto her stomach. She is still screaming, confessing in her delirium, ranting about Elena, about the money, about how she deserves to be queen. I am Mrs. Amberton, she wails as they drag her up. I own this town. You have the right to remain silent, an officer says, tightening the cuffs until she winces, and I suggest you use it, because you just confessed to first-degree murder in front of 4 law enforcement officers. I walk over to the sofa and look down. The gun is lying there, dark and menacing. I kick it away, toward the police. Victoria is dragged toward the door. She locks eyes with me one last time. There is no defiance left, only terror. She realizes that this time, there is no bail. There is no lawyer who can fix this. She is going to die in a cage, just not the gilded one she built. Liana, she screams, her voice fading as they haul her down the hallway. Liana, tell them I am your mother. I stand silent. I do not answer. As the commotion fades, I realize someone is missing. Where is Clarissa? I ask, looking at Silas. Silas checks his phone. The perimeter guards reported movement by the east gate 3 minutes ago. Someone climbed the fence. I walk to the window. The east gate leads to the woods, and beyond that, the highway. I can imagine her running. Clarissa, in her pink sequins and broken heels, stumbling through the mud, running away from the debt collectors, running away from the mother who is a murderer, running away from the sister she tormented. She has no money, no phone, no ID. She is entering the real world for the first time in her life, and she is doing it as a fugitive. "Let her go," Robert says from the floor. He is sitting up, leaning against the leg of the desk. He looks 10 years older, but his eyes are clear. She has to find her own way now. We cannot save her. I turn to look at him. "Are you okay?" Robert looks at his hands. "No, I do not think I will ever be okay. But I am awake." Finally, Silas walks over and places a hand on Robert's shoulder. "The statement regarding Elena's death will need to be formalized. Robert, it will be a long process. I will testify," Robert says. "I will tell them everything, every lie she told, every document she forged. I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never sees the sun again." The police are finishing up in the room, taking photos of the gasoline and the gun. The danger has passed. The adrenaline is fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. I walk to the fireplace. Above the mantel hangs the portrait of Arthur Amberton. He is painted in oil, sitting in this very library, holding a blueprint in his hand. His eyes are dark, intelligent, and judging. I look at the face of the man who built this empire, and the man who planted the seeds of its destruction to save me. I reach out and touch the frame. The gold leaf is cool under my fingertips. "You knew," I whisper to the painted canvas. "You knew she would come back. You knew Robert needed to hear the truth to break free. You orchestrated it all from the grave." I take a deep breath, inhaling the smell of the gasoline that almost destroyed us, and the scent of the old books that survived. "We are safe now, Grandfather," I say softly. "The house is clean. The debt is paid." I look back at Robert, who is finally standing up, unsteady but on his own 2 feet. I look at Silas, the guardian who kept his promise. "I did it," I say to the empty room, and to the ghosts watching from the shadows. "I finally did it." It has been 6 months since the Champagne Tower shattered on the floor of L'Aube Dorée. And today, I am shattering the last remnant of the Amberton legacy. I am standing in the foyer of the Greenwich mansion for the final time. The house is empty. The furniture, the tapestries, the heavy velvet drapes that blocked out the sun for 30 years, it is all gone. I sold everything at auction. Every chair Victoria sat in, every table Clarissa snorted lines off of, every painting that Robert hid behind. I liquidated it all and donated the proceeds to the new legal defense fund I established. The house itself sold yesterday. A tech billionaire from Silicon Valley bought it. He plans to gut the interior and turn it into a minimalist smart home. I hope he does. I hope he strips the walls down to the studs and removes every molecule of the toxic history that seeped into the plaster. I walk through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. It sounds different now. It does not sound like a dungeon. It sounds like just what it is, a pile of wood and stone that used to hold people prisoner, but now holds nothing but dust. I stop by the fireplace in the library. The scorch mark from the gasoline is still faintly visible on the marble hearth. A reminder of the night Victoria tried to burn us all down. Victoria. The name no longer sends a shiver down my spine. It is just a name on an inmate roster now. The trial was swift and brutal. With Robert's testimony, the audio recording of the phone call, and the mountain of forensic evidence Silas and I compiled, her high-priced defense attorneys did not stand a chance. She tried to play the victim until the very end, weeping in the courtroom about how she was a martyr for her family. The jury did not buy it. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She is currently residing in a correctional facility in Danbury. I have not visited her. I never will. I heard from Silas that she spends her days writing letters to former friends who return them unopened. She is finally receiving the exact amount of attention she deserves, 0. As for Clarissa, the golden child has tarnished. She did not go to prison, as she turned state's evidence against her mother to save her own skin, proving that loyalty in the Amberton family was always transactional, but she could not stay in New York. The debt collectors were too close, and her social standing was incinerated. Silas told me she is in Nevada now. She is working double shifts at a diner outside of Reno, living in a motel, and going by the name Jennifer. She blocks her face when customers try to take photos. She is learning, for the first time in her life, that $1 is something you earn with sweat, not something you demand with a tantrum. I do not wish her harm. I just wish her a long, quiet life of irrelevance. I leave the library and walk out the front door. I lock it behind me. I drop the keys into the envelope for the real estate agent. I do not look back. I get into my car, a sensible sedan, not a limousine, and drive toward the city. But I make a stop in Brooklyn first. My father lives in a 4th-floor walk-up in Park Slope now. It is a 1-bedroom apartment, smaller than the closet he had in Greenwich, but it is clean, and it is his. When I knock, Robert opens the door. He is wearing a sweater and jeans. He looks different. The gray pallor of alcoholism is gone, replaced by a healthier, albeit older, complexion. He goes to therapy 3 times a week. He attends meetings. He is learning how to cook. "Liana," he says, a genuine smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "I made coffee. I think I got the ratio right this time." We sit at his small kitchen table. The coffee is terrible, too weak and slightly bitter, but I drink it. "How is the move going?" he asks. "Done," I say. "The house is sold. The check cleared this morning." Robert nods slowly. He looks down at his hands. "I miss the garden," he admits softly, "but I do not miss the house. I never felt at home there." "Neither did I," I say. We sit in silence for a moment. It is a comfortable silence. We are not best friends. We probably never will be. There is too much scar tissue between us. But we are 2 survivors of the same shipwreck, sitting on the shore, watching the tide go out. "I am proud of you," Robert says suddenly. "I know I do not have the right to say it, but I am. You built something real out of the mess I made." "I did not do it alone," I say. "You helped me at the end. You saved my life in the library." "I just did what I should have done 30 years ago," he says. "But thank you for letting me try." I finish my coffee and stand up. "I have to go. Dad, I have an appointment." He stands up and hugs me. It is a clumsy hug, but it is warm. "Be careful out there." "Liana?" "I am always careful," I reply. I drive into Manhattan, to the headquarters of Vanguard Horizons. The name on the building is the same, but the soul of the company has changed. I fired the board members who were complicit in Victoria's schemes. I promoted the hard-working junior architects who had been overlooked. We are no longer designing vanity projects for corrupt billionaires. We are designing affordable housing, community centers, and sustainable urban gardens. I walk into the lobby, on the wall, where a massive portrait of Victoria and Robert used to hang. There is now a simple bronze plaque. It reads, "The Elena Foundation." The foundation is my true passion now. We provide high-level legal representation and forensic accounting services to victims of financial abuse and familial fraud. We help children who have been disinherited, spouses who have been gaslit, and elderly people who have been swindled by their caretakers. We give them the weapons to fight back. "Good morning, Ms. Rossi," the receptionist says. I smile. It still thrills me to hear it. "Ms. Rossi." "Good morning, Sarah," I reply. "Is the meeting with the landscape architect ready?" "He is waiting in your office," Sarah says, "and he brought blueprints." I walk into my office. Standing by the window is a man I met a month ago. His name is Elias. He is not from a famous family. He does not have a trust fund. He is a landscape architect who grew up on a farm in Vermont and worked his way through college. He turns when I enter. He has messy dark hair and hands that are rough from working with soil. He does not look at my clothes or my jewelry. He looks at my eyes. I think I solved the drainage issue for the Bronx project, Elias says, unrolling a scroll of paper. But it is going to require us to move the retaining wall. What do you think? I walk over and look at the plans. We argue for 10 minutes about soil composition and load-bearing structures. It is passionate, intellectual, and completely devoid of power plays. He respects my mind. He challenges my ideas. You are brilliant, Liana, he says, tapping the paper with his pencil. I would never have thought of that angle. I had to learn how to see around corners, I say. Survival instinct? He smiles. Well, I am glad you survived. The world needs more architects like you. He touches my hand. It is a brief. Electric contact. Dinner tonight, I found a place that serves terrible coffee but excellent pie. I laugh. I seem to be drinking a lot of terrible coffee lately. Yes, dinner sounds good. I leave work early that evening. There is one last ritual I need to perform. I drive out to a secluded beach on the north shore of Long Island. The wind is whipping off the ocean, cold and salty. I am carrying a garment bag. I find a spot near the water where the sand is wet and packed. I unzip the bag and pull out the dress. The charcoal silk sheath dress. It is a beautiful dress. It is the dress I wore when I took down an empire. It is the dress I wore when I found my voice. But it is also the dress I wore when I was Liana Amberton. I gathered some driftwood and dry seagrass. I strike a match. The fire catches quickly, the orange flames dancing against the gray twilight. I lay the dress on the fire. I watch the silk curl and blacken. I watch the structure dissolve into ash. I am not burning my memories. I am cauterizing the wound. I am releasing the armor I no longer need. I do not need to be the soldier anymore. I can just be the woman. When the fire dies down, I kick sand over the embers. I feel lighter. The weight that has been sitting on my chest for 3 decades is finally, truly gone. My final stop is the cemetery. It is a quiet, old graveyard in upstate New York, far away from the ostentatious Amberton family crypt in Greenwich. This is where my mother, Elena, is buried, and next to her, at his specific request in the codicil, lies Arthur Amberton. The sun is setting, casting long golden shadows across the grass. I walk to the 2 headstones. Elena's is simple granite, carved with a single rose. Arthur's is larger, but unpretentious. I kneel between them. I did it, Mom, I whisper. I got him out. Dad is free, and Victoria can never hurt us again. I reach into my bag and pull out a piece of paper. It is an official document from the state of New York, stamped with the court's seal. Certificate of change of name. Former name, Liana Marie Amberton. New name, Liana Elena Rossi. I place the paper on the grass in front of Elena's grave. I took your name, I tell her. I wanted to carry something of yours that she could not steal. I wanted the world to know whose daughter I really am. I look at Arthur's grave. And thank you, grandfather, for the claws, for the money, but mostly for teaching me that the truth is the only legacy that matters. I sit there for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon. I think about revenge. People say revenge is sweet. They are wrong. Revenge is not sweet. It is hard, and it is cold, and it is exhausting. It does not fix the past. It does not bring back the dead. It does not give you back the childhood you lost. But it does give you something else. It gives you a clean slate. It clears away the debris so you can build something new. It restores the balance of the universe. I stand up. The air is crisp. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with oxygen that feels cleaner than it ever has before. I am 30 years old. I am an architect. I am a daughter. I am a survivor. I am Liana Rossi. I turn away from the graves and walk back toward the car. The path ahead is illuminated by the last rays of the sun. It is bright. It is open. I think about the message I would send to anyone trapped in a gilded cage, anyone being told they are less than, anyone being used as a pawn in someone else's game. Family is not blood. Family is not a last name. Family is where you are safe. Family is where you are respected. And if you find yourself at a table where you are not served love, do not fight for a seat. Flip the table, burn the dining room down, and go build your own house. I smile as I step onto the pavement. The future is unwritten, and for the first time in my life, I am the one holding the pen. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, justice, and rebirth. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from a busy city like New York, or somewhere quiet and peaceful? Please let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories, and if you enjoyed Liana's journey, please make sure to subscribe to the channel BitterSweet Drama Stories. Hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and see you in the next video.